Hey everyone, it's Ivan, kitpatcher.com, out here for another gear review, and today, talking about this guy right here, which is the Impact 4000 by Vortex. We'll go ahead and start with, what is it? Well, it is a laser rangefinder and a ballistic computer. So, kind of does both of the things at once. If you look at the, loosen this, you look at the front of it, number of lenses inside there, and then when you look at the back, there's actually the screen. And so what you end up doing with it is you end up using it to range, laser rangefinder, and then you will set it up. There's a number of different profiles, basically some kind of vanilla ones set up like 308, 6.5 Creedmoor, I think 7mm Remington mag, 5.56, whatever, and then of course custom ones, so that when you end up ranging something, it gives you a immediate ballistic solution, either in mil or MOA. I have mine set up for mil, in part because pairing it with this optic, which is the Leupold Mk5 HD, 3.6 to 18, first focal plane. It is their trimmer 3 reticle in there, and I guess, yeah, real quick on this. This is all sitting on top of this rifle right here, which is the Aero Solus in their competition chassis and 6 Creedmoor. With that, I have these Hawkins precision rings. They're awesome. They make a version, which is this one right here, tactical version with diving board, so I can mount this guy. And these are 35mm for set optic, and then I have this on here. Also, the way you can use this, there's buttons on board. Go over kind of up top, go over all this more in a minute. You can obviously use those buttons. I have it set up with this remote right here. This remote, it's just Velcroed on right now. You can actually put it, comes with either pick rail or M-lock. So you can actually, I think there might be a key, I think there's a key mod attachment too. So you can basically mount it somewhere wherever you have M-lock, pick rail, or key mod. I just have it Velcroed right there. I can remove it, move the, or put Velcro wherever I want it. For me, it actually works really well right there, especially I'll usually have this back. Go ahead and range it, run the bolt, get my ballistic solution, either dial or hold, and break shots. So I will now show you, I guess, kind of what it looks like when you're actually using the unit. If the unit's asleep, to turn it on, you press this top button, which is also the range button. Right there, I just ranged, showing that what I ranged was 361 yards. You can set up for meters if you want. My come up with this profile is 1.35 mils. It's saying left for windage, 0.42 mils. Not going to do that. And then up top, there's actually degrees. So it's saying it's at a 1 degree right there. Real quick, I'm not going to go over how to set everything up necessarily, but if you go to settings, it brings it up. It's all pretty intuitive. I'll go to setup. I'll go down to profile. Right there, there's all the preset, 30-06, 300 Win Mag, all that stuff. And then at the bottom one, if you can read it, it actually says Solus, 6 Creedmoor. I'll click on that. Bullet, click into there. Go ahead, caliber 243, grain weight 105, length, ballistic coefficient. You can input all that stuff back out. Go down to my rifle. Sight over, or sight height rather, 2 inches. Zero range 100, twist 1 and 7.5 inches. Velocity 2977, and back out all this stuff. Pretty neat though. Again, I'm not going to go through programming all that. Suffice to say, you can go ahead and set all that stuff up, and with the buttons, it's actually pretty intuitive. And this thing is actually pretty crazy. Let's see if I can find something far away. How about, see if it'll range that out there. There we go. 1,939 yards. My come up is 24.3 mils. Coming way up. As I mentioned, I set up this remote right here to pair them. You basically hit the range button on that and range button on this. So when I pull this gun out, if I'm actually going to do some shooting, I'll go ahead and hit range, they pair. After that, I can go ahead and find something like that tree out there, hit it, and gives it to me. Right there, 1,194 yards. My come up is 9.49. So I can either hold in the reticle or come here and dial up to that 9.49 solution. And speaking of dialing, this is actually really important. So the way this works is you ultimately end up coming up with a continuous 0 for your laser rangefinder. So if you've ever shot night vision and stuff like that, there's a number of different zeros you have, like converging, or one of which is continuous offset, parallel 0. And so that's basically what we're doing. What we want to do is we want to get the laser from this laser rangefinder to be moving in a continuous line with what I'm looking at inside our optic. But what about if we dial? It no longer works. If you're dialing in here, you're basically changing where the center of your optic is looking at that point, which is how scopes work. But we want this to be parallel pretty much forever. So the way you do it is probably zeroed at 100 yards or whatever your 0 is. You basically zero out your optic, in my case 100 yards, and then you'll go through your settings and you actually can activate a laser, a visible red laser in there, and you will see it on paper. You can of course do this at a closer range like 50. I waited until I think it was overcast, and it's probably kind of later in the day too, so there wasn't tons of light. Totally visible at 100 yards, especially on magnification. And so what you end up doing is kind of the same way you would actually zero a laser if you're shooting night vision, or even a visible green laser or red laser if you just have a laser aiming device on your rifle, and you make your adjustments for windage and elevation. And so what we're trying to do with respect to this is we're figuring out, again, measuring, hey, from the center of my optic, the center of my optic here, to the center of this unit where that laser's emitting, what is that distance? And you come up at that distance and ideally do it in mils. So then when you're looking through your optic at 100 yards, you make your adjustments to where that red visible laser is that exact distance directly over the top of your point of aim at 100 yards with your optic zeroed out. What does that do? Gives us a continuous 0, or basically a parallel 0 forever when the optic is zeroed out, which means for this unit to actually work and do its job, we need to actually be zeroed out on our turret. I can talk sometimes. So then once we've done that, we keep this thing at 0, and then we can basically go around and range everything, and it's giving us a correct range. If for whatever reason you forget and I'm dialed up because I'm shooting far at like 4.6 mils, my range will not be true. This unit is looking somewhere other than where my optic is looking because I changed where the optic is looking. So very important to actually use this unit. One, get it zeroed, and then make sure you're actually ranging when your optic is zeroed out at whatever that distance or whatever you zeroed it to at that point in time, if that makes sense. Promise it's not super complicated in use, just got to be aware of it. Which I guess brings me to how have I actually used this and what has been my experience. Well, I've actually shot it a lot and I've really enjoyed it. One of the places is Rock Lake Rifle Range, amazing shooting facility up in northeastern Washington, steel going out all over the place out to like over 1,000 yards, and it's really cool. This allows you to very quickly range, say, hey, that's what I want to shoot there, gives you a correction, where you can either dial or hold in your reticle, depending on your optic. With this one right here, really easy to hold. It's a trimmer 3 in this Mk5 HD. And yeah, break your shots, move to the next target. And tons of fun, and just really simple, really fast and easy. I also took this entire setup in part just for myself, kind of a proof of concept, because I want to try it out, and actually went and shot it in a PRS match. Really fun, probably suboptimal if you're trying to go like win that thing, which I was not, but it was really cool. The entire match, I never once touched my elevation. And as I mentioned, you need to go ahead and keep this thing zeroed out for ranging, because you're initially setting that offset with the laser in there. But yeah, you can of course range then dial, but the way I had this set up is I was like, no, like I have a Horus style trimmer 3 reticle in here, and this will give me my solution. Let's just do it all. So basically every stage I would range my target, get my hold in the reticle, make my shots, go to my next target, range it, hold, fire, run the bolt, and yeah, continued for that entire match. Tons of fun. Is it necessarily best practice? Kind of depends on the course of fire. For example, there was one stage where it was, I don't know, 2 or 3 rounds at these respective targets, one at like 3 something, move on to the next target, 5 something, 7 something, and then 9 something, and a number of shots at each of those. There, it was actually really advantageous, like no loss, because it's like, boom, range, all right, here's my hold, shoot, same hold, shoot, and then move through those respective different target distances, versus some of the other courses of fire, not advantageous, because range this one, get your hold, shoot it, go to the next one, range it, shoot it, and then a third one, and then back. And so you're kind of only, or for myself particularly, I'm only remembering so many holds. And so if there was a number of different targets that you're shooting out and back, it was pretty easy for me to just not remember what my hold is. So I'd just go ahead and range it one more time, which time penalty if you're on a clock. But overall, did a good job, and yeah, it was definitely a lot of fun to shoot that match like that. Where else have I used this setup? Predator hunting, and it's amazing, because here's how it usually works. As far as if you're going to shoot a distance that's going to require you to hold or dial. Well, usually you're glassing, usually in binos or something like that, because to try and glass in like a laser rangefinder, suboptimal. So you glass, be like, hey, that's what I want to shoot. Get your laser rangefinder, find it again, range it, gives you however far it is. Then take out your ballistic app on your phone, figure out what your hold is or your dial, and then you either dial or hold respectively. Kind of tedious and time consuming, especially if your shot window is pretty small, like narrow. With coyotes, usually really short, because largely they never stop moving. They're just always running. And as soon as they see you, they're like, I know what's coming next. Like, I'm out of here. So with this, really quick to set up. As far as, I mean, really, it's just however quick you can get your gun up, either on a bipod or a tripod. And at that point, usually pull this thing out of the vehicle, hit that, they pair. So by the time I come out, I can go ahead, get on target, hit that, look up, see my solution, run the bolt, off safe, break a shot. Just holding, because right there I'm like, oh, I need to come up this much. Really, really fast. And as a consequence, actually have been really successful with the setup, going after coyotes, because you have this really limited window of time in which they're going to be visible before they go over a ridge or drop down into a bunch of brush, whatever it may be. And this whole setup is incredibly fast. Other things worth mentioning, there's a lot of things in the menu that you can do as far as how you want it to range, to include some like extreme long range type settings. Have not used those. I will say this thing ranges really, really far, range things like over 2,500 yards away. It's also incredibly accurate because again, you're using your optic, which is really nice because yeah, it can be on 3.6 or something can be far. Crank this thing up to 18 power, nice clear glass, hit range, and it is ranging exactly when I'm pointing at. To include, again, in my experience, pinpoint accuracy, to include, I think the other day it was a coyote at like 677 or something. Immediately gave me a firing solution, fired, and yeah, got him. Really cool. And having that pinpoint accuracy with a reticle versus lots of times with rangefinders, it's like, hey, somewhere in this circle inside this little rangefinder, it's like it's probably ranging that. This, especially having zeroed it, you know exactly where it is. Really nice. There's a compass in here. I'm laughing because it's like, hey, calibrate. And I'm like, okay, how do we calibrate this? Went out, tried it for like 20 minutes straight, would not calibrate. And I was like, never again. Not a good use of my time. And the way you calibrate this is, goes through a number of menus. It's like, all right, rotate this way. And you like rotate it like this. And then you rotate it like all of these different things, supposedly calibrates it. Kept failing. I'm like, I'm doing what you're telling me to do. Called a buddy who has one. I'm like, hey, have you had any luck calibrating this compass? He's like, no. I tried it for like a half an hour one time and then doing the exact same thing. And then one time it just worked. And I was like, okay, well, whatever. Don't really need the compass. So frankly, I've never used it. The other thing is, like per the manual, anytime you're more than like 6 miles or whatever it is from where you've calibrated it, you should recalibrate it. I'm like, oh, so am I now taking this thing that was zeroed on here off and maybe it's zeroed again? Or am I spinning my whole gun? I'm like, no. I'm like, pass. So that is a thing. I've never used it. It is what it is. Something I will say it's pretty nice about this unit is not weird batteries. I mentioned that because recently another rangefinder I have, battery died. I'm like, dang it. Pull out the battery. It's a weird battery. I don't even remember what it was, but not a normal battery you would just have. This, undo that battery door right there, works on one CR123, and the remote uses a 2032. And if you do shooting, you probably have other optics that use respectively both those batteries. So makes it really easy. Having used this quite a bit, I think they're still respectively both on the same battery. As far as how big this unit is, pretty chunky. I want to say it's, I don't know, a little over 4 inches long, a little over 2 inches high. It's pretty big. It's a big brick. And on top of that, it's about a pound. And on top of that, now you have to have some diving board to put it on there, which is more metal and more weight. It's heavy, but it also gives you a immediate ballistic solution, which is really cool. I will say this is just the Vortex Impact 4000. I don't know if there's a iteration of generations in there. If you go to buy it, it's just that. There isn't like a Gen 1, Gen 2. Hopefully there will be a Gen 2 that is smaller because I love what this does. It's definitely bulky and I feel like it could probably be smaller, which would be really amazing. All said, who do I think this would be good for? Well, someone that is probably wanting to make really accurate shots, either by holding or dialing in a compressed timeline. As I spoke to, traditionally, the way I've done shooting is find something, range it, check my ballistic app, then usually dial. This allows you to be on the gun, find whatever you're gonna find, hit it, immediately ranges it, immediately gives you a firing solution, and then you can either hold or you can dial, time dependent or preference, whatever. it's really cool and really fast. Where does that come into play? Well, compressed timelines. As I mentioned, predator hunting, or these are obviously used for mill where limited exposure, short time frame, you need to make a good, very accurate shot. This will lend itself to that. And I think overall it's just a really cool capability. Is it cheap? No, it's not. Full MSRP is like $3,000. Having said that, usually you can find them for $2,000, and I've actually seen them as low as I think like $1,600 on sale too. So definitely came down a bunch in price. They are definitely big, they're bulky, and they're heavy. Hopefully there'll be a Gen 2 that'll be smaller, but until then, if you're looking at making precise shots and want to shorten that entire chain as far as identifying, ranging, getting a ballistic solution so you can fire, this will lend itself to that. It's pretty cool, but if you're interested, there'll be a link down below and you can check it out. But as always, thanks for joining us at kitbadger.com. Look forward to seeing you next time.